Hi, Cori. I wanted to send you a response to your email, and I thought I might even try my audio with it, just in case it was more likely to make sense than trying to type out a letter. Um, in fact, I don't mind if you use my name, or the fact that we decided to provide financial support, which was an unusual circumstance for us. I wanted to, in fact, mention, I guess, two things. One is that perhaps if the teams being mentioned are getting credit, that maybe Ben could as well, just even simply to say he's a, you know, uh, somebody that works at a nonprofit agency in Nairobi, or a social epidemiologist, or that sort of thing, because it was pretty amazing what I think the three of us did together. And that I don't want to, I'd rather the emphasis be on Abdi and Hassan, certainly, than us. It was very sweet, though, to hear them thanking me and your reference. I am, in fact, in Vermont, not New Hampshire. I live way up in the Northeast Kingdom, a town of 620 people. But I guess, to a certain extent, the people who hear this may, in fact, gloss over the part where, the providing financial support was something that was very unusual for me, having been an old hand in international work. It wasn't often that I have sort of stepped forward with my own money to provide support. And in this case, I think it really was, in part, the story that I heard, and just a sense of complete, just no, not another person wasted. And that I really loved the fact that you all had put him with the microphone. And so we had local people and the citizen journalism approach. And when I offered to help, I had no particular idea of what that would be. If anything, maybe just to be another voice in the wilderness. But I also had a lot of experience in international and refugee issues, so who knew? Um, it's been a lot of fun to get to know Abdi over the email almost entirely. I don't think we have, in fact, never talked by phone. I've talked to Hassan, I've talked to Ben, and I've talked a lot to Abdi by email, but I was always a little reluctant to call him on his phone while he was in Mogadishu, because I really did not want to feel like at any chance I could endanger him. And as we embarked on this conversation, my sort of interest and just attraction to what I heard really increased a lot, because we ranged over every kind of topic. We talked about dogs and Islam. We talked about snow. I sent him a video. I found myself in a sort of moral conundrum of, he's telling me these amazing things about Somalia, and just gruesome, terrible things that I am familiar with in other parts of the world, but to feel somebody that close to the danger and what was required was just very difficult. And I would find myself in my daily life walking around just realizing the gift of being safe and having my family for dinner. And I think it made every day I would carry with me a little bit of that luxury that I now was so clear that I had. Um, and I guess I felt a little awkward about it, when I'm writing to Abdi and complaining about the snow, and he's got something a lot more serious to talk about, that Hassan sort of chimed in and said, no, it really matters if people are listening, even if our experiences are so different. And in fact, it's better that there's an authentic conversation that's going on, so that we are not pretending anything. And one of the things that I really appreciated was that I asked the questions that I was curious about and felt like I got really straight answers. It was pretty amazing. And, around the time that Christmas came, my kids, the kids that I was teaching in science, My students at Dartmouth became sort of also drawn into this and were willing to raise money and wanted to be sure that there was something in the spirit of Christmas. There wasn't a particular idea. If anything, it was about raising money for his mother, about making sure that he had enough money to buy internet access, that he had the opportunity to, if we were actually communicating with him a lot, was he in fact, having to bear the burden of that? And so we wanted to make sure those costs were covered. So I decided to chip in a bit from the funds that were raised and our own family funds, and I then did a wire transfer from my bank, which was an interesting experience because somewhere a few days later I got a call, a very curious call from my bank and some other people wanting to sort of clarify if I was in fact passing funds to Osama bin Laden or terrorism, and wanting a lot of information that I was in fact unwilling to give them, since this person had in fact requested that he remain anonymous. And this took some talking on my part to try and have them see it my way. And that the amount of information that I had was that I was only going to give a certain amount of information. Ultimately, it seemed to have worked, but what I learned was that a lot of the funds, a large percentage, went to the banking system, Bank of New York, and that wasn't really very pleasant. And considering the amount of time, it took like a week and a half and a lot of very odd phone calls with my bank. I think it was my bank or an agency in Washington, D.C. And so I realized that I had a very good friend in Nairobi that was working there, and that I could in fact transfer funds to him directly, and he could then provide them to Hassan. Hassan could use the hawala to provide it to Abdi. So I went that route, which worked remarkably well and much faster. And as a public health person, one always is trying to sort of have the largest impact from the point of view of, the population. And all I could sort of do was say, well, there's an old story about if you're walking along the beach and a lot of starfish have washed up, and you pick one up and throw it in, and someone says to you, well, what do you, that's not going to make any difference. And the comment is, yes, it will to that one. And, I did not know as I entered this if Abdi was a man of integrity. I did not know if I was just throwing money away. It's one of those risks that you take and decide that it's worth it. If it works out, it's going to be great. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We weren't risking something that was too much. And I think that was also important, was that these are not monies that impoverished us and would make all the difference. And their needs that they talked about to us were not endless. It was getting this person simply to safety, where I felt, and the more that I knew him, that he had the wherewithal to really make a lot out of the opportunities provided to him. And that, as I said to him, I can provide this. I can't promise everything more. I can't, adopt him or promise lifetime support. And that's not what he was looking for. And so I really, there were times along the way where I went, oh my gosh. At one point we did a background check that was required when we were trying Plan A, which was to get Abdi taken quickly from Somalia to Nairobi. We were making a case for his need for protection, but that wasn't working out. And although we tried through various means. One of them required that we uh, go through an agency, and they required a background check, at which point they're telling me, well, possibly, Abdi went to Nairobi at some point. We don't know when. He may still be there. In fact, we think he's a 40-year-old journalist, filing reports from the cafes of Nairobi. And this caused me a moment of pause, but it seemed both unlikely and, I was able fairly quickly to look at how that information had just not made any sense. But yeah, there were times where you think, well, this may be one of those things where I just sort of say, well, another lesson learned. But instead, what I got were stories back from Abdi and Hassan about, the bit of money that I sent that was turned into fish and a big meal in a refugee camp and a blessing from his mother to me, where just simple things that I could provide meant a lot. And I wish anybody could be so lucky to find themselves tied to the larger world in ways that both feel like my trust was being I guess, rewarded or encouraged. I was enjoying intellectually and emotionally the discussions that I was having, and a lot of fun. And, and I think in part it's because you and Dick Gordon and Paul Solopak and other people had learned who this person was. And I just felt like I, I have a son, and all the losses that he was going through, that Abdi was going through, I just wanted to be one person that could contribute. Storytelling's a powerful, powerful thing, and I appreciate that more every day. So yeah, you can use my name, Sharon McDonald. I'm associate professor at Dartmouth Medical School and the Dartmouth Institute for Healthcare and Health Policy. I'm also working with the public health program and in science education, but I primarily have also inherited my mother's photography business. She was quite a photographer, and so there's been another part to my life, which has been also mother-daughter press and working with visual images. So if there's any of that that could be of use to people who might have inclinations and are afraid to follow up on them for support or help to other people, I hope this might be a lesson to the other extreme to maybe take a chance.